It does give me great pleasure to welcome you to this 2019 Annual General Meeting. As Joe says, the 57th, so that's something to be proud of. I acknowledge the traditional owners, past, present and emerging, of the land on which we meet, both here at 8 Mile Plains and also at all of the participating locations that you've heard. It's wonderful to have so many people. I don't think I've ever been to an AGM where this room's been quite so packed, and we've had so many people online as well, so that's really great. And I welcome all members who've joined us today, as well as my fellow directors, Angela, Heather, Chris on Blue Jeans, David possibly in Hamburg, and I'm not sure about Anna Marie, who's actually retiring at this stage, and I'll go into that later. I also welcome many of our staff, a number of our customers and families, our auditors, Ashley Carl's here, our representatives from CBA, Scott and Leah, up the back. It's great to have so many people with us. I request that all members who are present, either here or on our dial-in locations, please make sure you've signed the attendance register, so we've got a full list of every member who's been here. And that can be recorded in their minutes. There's also provision, I think, for apologies to be recorded. Is there anyone who has an apology that they wish to have formally recorded? I'll ask this room first. No? Anyone out on Blue Jeans, on the ether, have any apologies that they wish to be formally recorded in the minutes? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Right, and Sandra, I think we do have a quorum. Sandra. So there's a certain amount of routine which we've already started on, fairly boring stuff we're obliged to cover at annual general meetings. But as long as you can endure all that, I think you will also gain some insights into the various reports you'll read and hear today, into the incredible things that are happening within Multicap and our vision for an even greater future for our customers and their families. So one of the boring items is to confirm the minutes of the last annual general meeting, which have been circulated with your papers. Would someone who was at that meeting in 2018 please move that they'll be confirmed? And show yourself so that Sandra can report you. Neil Heather, and the seconder, Haynes. I put that motion. Those in favour? Please raise your hands. Passed unanimously. There's none against. Passed unanimously. So I'm going to hand that back to Joe very shortly to give you an overview of what's happening in Multicap. But there's a couple of things I'd like to say, if I can be so bold before we start. If nothing else, I need to say an enormous thank you on behalf of you, myself, my fellow directors, to Jo for her tireless, inspiring and effective work as our CEO. She is exceptional and she's treasured, so we're very lucky to have her. She's not quite as long-standing as I am, but she's been here for a long time, and massive things have happened during that time. However, our sole purpose, and you'll see it on the front cover of your annual report, our sole purpose remains to enhance the quality of the lives of people with a disability and their families. Our byline is always, always. Nice play on words, but in practice what we all strive to achieve every day, even when we think something's going to be routine and predictable, and so often it isn't. I'm very conscious that the reason I'm standing here this year as your chair is because of the untimely and sudden death of our recent chair, Michael Roach, who worked tirelessly in that role. He was leading us with vision and enthusiasm when his time came to a very abrupt end. And we're grateful for Michael's service and inspiration over time, and that he was with us, and we again pay our sincere condolences to Jenny, his wife, and his family. I've had the privilege of being on the board for a good number of years, some would say too many, and the organisation and what we did for our customers when I joined, much less back in 1962 when we started, is unrecognisable when compared with its breadth and size today. other than that one sole underlying purpose that I mentioned previously. I believe that virtually everyone in every role at Multicap perpetuates that mission of customer and family-centred support and compassion. So even though we're entirely different, we're much bigger, much more sophisticated, many more rules, many more things to think about, still there's that underlying purpose of what we're all here for. Now, any organisation has at least occasional lapses from the high standards to which it aspires, and I'm sure we're no exception. But I believe that in the vast majority of cases, we do live up to and deliver our sole purpose, as well as, or better than, the best disability care providers throughout Australia. We'll doubtless hear in the Disability Royal Commission of providers who don't meet those standards that we aspire to. We welcome the chance which the Royal Commission gives us to check that we are in fact meeting those standards, to remedy any shortcomings on our part that might be identified, and to be made aware of lapses that can occur with others, and to take even more precautions than we currently do to ensure that we don't go down those paths. So Multicap now employs well over 1,000 staff, I think about 1,100. We have almost 1,500 customers. We have a budget which is heading towards $100 million per annum in the near future. Modern governance and performance standards now far surpass the just be honest and fair standard which applied when I joined. So it's a somewhat daunting task for directors and for our executive. I'd like to pay tribute to our directors who meet regularly for formal board and committee meetings, many hours per month, and extended strategy retreats, as well as participating in different engagements with Multicap's customers, families and staff. I've been around the state to Rockhampton, Rome, Emerald, where else? Capalaba, various places this year, and that's really gratifying. There are ever-increasing time commitments involved with complex and onerous governance and organisational responsibilities, to which I've referred. And before his untimely passing, Michael Roche had done a good deal of research into the issue of remuneration of directors, which we've rejected in the past, but which has now become very common for not-for-profits in Australia. As a result, for the first time, I'm letting you know, for full disclosure, a modest remuneration package is available to any Multicap director who wishes to avail themselves of it. For the first time this year, it can be taken by way of an emolument or by way of Multicap funding professional training to increase board skills. And I think there's a number of directors who are using it in that way. It's significantly less than what the private or government sectors would pay for similar services. It's not expected to be taken in full or at all by some directors, but it's there, shouldn't be needed, and it's a reflection of what being a director of Multicap is all about now. It's a great time commitment. Very glad I've reached semi-retirement now, so I can put the time into it that I haven't in the past, and it's very rewarding, I can tell you, in a non-monetary sense. There will be an election of directors later in the meeting, which I'll speak more about at the time. But I mentioned that Anna Marie Shaw, who's been with us since 2014, is retiring today because she's leaving for a very exciting new position overseas. And we thank her for her contribution during the time she's been with us. She will be missed. I'd like to acknowledge and thank all our Multicap staff across all the service locations where they work every day supporting our customers to have great lives. As directors, I know I have in particular appreciated meeting and hearing many of you staff and at the employee roadshows this year. As always, we are eternally grateful to Sandra Williams, our secretary, with her untiring and so efficient work supporting the board as our company secretary. No question ever stumps her. It's wonderful. When you read the annual report, and there's a lot of it there, And here, just a few of the highlights, which I know Joe will talk about today. I'm sure that you'll agree with me that these are exciting times for Multicap. As I've said, I've had the pleasure of travelling this year to a number of locations throughout Queensland. I've spoken with staff and customers and their carers. It's been incredibly enriching and exhilarating for me. I'm immensely proud of the work of my fellow directors, our senior executive team, and indeed every member of staff is delivering today in delivering that sole purpose. So thank you, and to all our members, for making Multicap what it is. Joe.
Thank you. Now, Aaron and I are going to play tag team with the PowerPoint because the clicker has decided it's not going to work this afternoon. So let's go to the next slide and we'll... Okay, so John has talked about our directors. We have 6 amazing directors and there's photos of them all so that the ones that are on blue jeans you can actually see in person. And we are very fortunate that they give us their time, their expertise, and they ask really difficult questions, which sometimes can be slightly annoying, but it is really good for our organisation because it makes us really question what we do and why we do it. The board, and John has covered this a little bit, but the board's role is around strategy, around ensuring that our constitution is upheld, ensuring that we perform well, the board is effective, they have a really big role in setting strategy for the organisation, and increasingly in the quality of the services that we deliver, the health and safety of our workplace, risk, which is a challenging and growing area for all of us. And the other really important area is that we aspire to be an employer of choice, and our board support that strategy and what we do across the organisation in managing our staff. Go back a second, we've talked about, we've got a couple of changes in directors over the year. So Michael sadly passed away earlier this year, and Anna Marie, John has covered, is not seeking re-election. We have 3 board committees and a 4th one that meets infrequently, but the 3 key committees, Finance, Audit and Assets, which is chaired by Chris Perkins, who you can see on the screen at the moment. Risk, Quality and Systems, chaired by Angela down the front here, and the Business Development Committee was chaired by Michael until he passed away, and then David Withers, who hopefully is hearing us online, has taken over that. And those are the 3 committees that support the work of the board in supporting the organisation. The executive team, so we have a really amazing group of middle and senior leaders across this organisation, and that's what makes the organisation so successful. Irrespective of where people are in the roles, the leadership qualities that we have are sensational. So there's the picture of the current executive leadership team and Sandra, and we are just about to appoint a new Chief Commercial Officer, hence the kind of shadowed out picture there, and we're hoping that that person will be on board in the new year. Most of last year that role was held by Mike Goodall, who decided to move on from the organisation about a month ago now. They're a great team of people. They're all in the room today except Kate, who's got a sick child and is at home today, but I'd like to thank them and just acknowledge the work that they do publicly. One of the really important things that the organisation does is set its strategic plan over 5 years, and that's the work that the board does, informed by the executive team and our customers and our families across the organisation. So we're almost at the end of our 5-year strategic plan, and it was just timely to put this slide in, because in 2015, when this plan started, it was actually pre the NDIS. And, we've lived through 3 years of transition and the enormous upheaval that has caused for us as an organisation, for our customers and our families, as people trying to move from a state system into a federal system. And it's kind of just a bit odd to look back and go, well, there was a time not that long ago when the NDIS didn't exist and we were all blissfully unaware of the changes and the impact it was going to have for all of us. But we have worked through what were the challenges that we were facing, what was happening for our customers and our families, and how did we need to change what we were doing, and then actually what does the future look like, and how do we open up services and create opportunities for people to have better lives because they've now got funding that will support that going forward, whereas they didn't before. So it's a great story, albeit a little bit challenging on a daily basis. We've got 6 key strategic pillars in our strategic plan, and they are well articulated in your annual report, so I won't labour any of those, but in the annual report is an example of the things that we've achieved over the last 12 months against those 6 pillars, and then what we are looking to achieve over the next 12 months against that as well. And those 6 pillars are actually the foundation of our organisation, so if we get them right, we've got a strong and stable and sustainable organisation that just then gets to flourish on top of that. The other really important thing for us is our great expectations, and John's already talked about it. Everything for us comes back to our sole purpose, that the quality of life of a person with disability is enhanced through our support. And our staff talk about great expectations all the time, the vision, why we're here as an organisation, and we have a series of behaviours which we refer to as IBRAG, and for many of you in some of our locations you'll hear that terminology all the time, and it really just stands for the behaviours that we expect to see in the workplace from everybody across the organisation. So inspire yourself and your team, be accountable for your role, respect and value functional relationships, add life to Multicap's sole purpose, and the last one, who's going to add it?
Give and receive constructive feedback.
Excellent. Give and receive constructive feedback. And we use that at the start of every meeting across the organisation, where our staff and our customers give examples of how we've actually delivered that behaviours and how that's changed people's lives. We've had a great year. We've got some great highlights in the annual report, so really I've just stuck them up on the slide, but we have a lot of cars. You know, when we counted up how many vehicles we had that are delivering services to customers, we've got more vehicles in our fleet than the local community transport organisation. Isn't that interesting? So all these things that kind of happen for us that are a bit unexpected and that we do because people with disability deserve a good life and because the current systems don't fund them well. We build houses as well, but I'll show you them in a minute. All right, more data. There's lots of data in the annual report. And, you know, we've got some really, if you look at how many coffees Fiona and the Montelupo cafes have made, almost 45,000 coffees over the last 12 months. So it's a lot of coffee. And a lot of people with disability learning new skills about barista, hospitality, serving food, growing those cafes. So that's an exciting story. Go to the next one. The other thing that happens in this organisation, because we have such a long history, is that people pass away. And that's always unexpected, even if it is expected. And it's always a process of grieving for us because we've known many of these customers for a long time and a long time of their lives. So that's a list of the customers over the last 12 months who have left us. I'll also just make reference to a couple of families, and in particular Glenn Easley, who was one of the founding families of this organisation in 1962, and he passed away earlier this year as well. So he was a life member and a founding family. Was very special. Staff, we have an amazing staff. We've got, I think, over 1,100 staff across the organisation at the moment. We run a regular staff engagement survey, and the result for this year was 68%, so that sits just at that top quartile of all Australian and New Zealand companies. Most not-for-profits, if we compare it in the same survey, their staff engagement was about 58%. So we've got engaged staff, aligned to our purpose, doing a great job supporting our customers, and that's really important. So we had a lot of fun during the year. One of the important things we do lots and lots of important things, but we opened the new houses at Finucane Road at Alexandra Hills. And this is a good story in two ways, that the land at Alexandra Hills came to us as part of a merger between us and Share Bayside some years ago. And it was their old kind of head office, 2-storey brick, you know, that lovely yellow glass everywhere, that kind of look, right? So that got knocked down, and we built these 2 amazing state-of-the-art 300 square metre houses that will provide homes for 6 people with disability and support staff. And we had a great time opening them. They're very modern. They've got lights and switches and electronics, and the blinds go up and down and the doors open and all the things that you would want to enable people to be independent. So that's a great celebration. And Michael was here when that was his last formal event for the organisation when he opened those houses. So it was a special day. Multicap Celebrate. So every year we organise a huge event to thank our staff for the amazing job they do over the year, and it's called Multicap Celebrate. So there's some great photos from last year. We run a Staff Excellence Awards program, and there's all the award winners down the front there with their certificates, proudly showing them, and just a fantastic night. So ours is on this year on the Luke 6th of December, and we'll be doing it all over again. So next year we'll show you the photos of this year's party. The other big thing that we do through the year is fashionable, so a fashion show. And this year we had probably 50-50 models with disability and models without disability. So our aspiration for that is to allow people to experience goals that they want to achieve. And many of our customers have always wanted to be models and walk the catwalk. And so that happened on that day with amazing outfits, hair, makeup. It was just such a great day. And then the middle photo in the middle is Rebecca, who did a little interview afterwards. She'd always wanted to do fashionable, and then when the MC asked her would she do it next year, straight away she said nope, because there was too much waiting around in the back and she wanted to be out in the room with all the energy and the action. So I think she's a one-time model, but it was a great event. Sport, we do a lot of sport across all our organisations, and the Pine Rivers Group run an annual Inter-Service Cup where lots of the disability support organisations bring their customers along. The whole day, teams compete with each other. There's, rounds and semi-finals and finals and awards and barbecue, cheerleaders, all sorts of stuff. It's a great day. So there's some photos of this year's event as well, and that just keeps growing year on year. I think there was 12 or 14 teams that competed this year. And skills development in the morning, which is the other important thing. The Broncos come and teach some of our customers how to pass the ball and tackle and laugh, I imagine. Projects, we always have projects on the go. We have an amazing property and maintenance team who have such skill and expertise that we do a lot of stuff that at a lot cheaper and more cost-effective price because we've got our own staff that do it. Finucane Road we've talked about. The house on the top right, we're building 2 houses in Ormo on the way to the Gold Coast. They're just about they're at lock-up and I think about key handover, so very close to providing new homes for people down there. The bottom one is the kitchen is Robina, so we got a grant this year to replace the kitchen, so they've got a modern kitchen. And the other one I think is Mars and Respite, again another grant to replace the bathroom. So we're constantly making sure that our properties are maintained at a really high level so that people have a great place to live and hang out. Projects coming forward, this is always the really exciting bit. So we're never satisfied with what we've done, and we've always got 100 different ideas for what might be coming going forward. So we bought some land through the year, or the board approved the purchase of some land during the year at Blyblye, and there's a West Blyblye, it's on the way to Sunshine Coast. Just in from, what's the close suburb? Maroochydore. Yeah, really nice. It's 8,000 square metres. You'd love it, Deborah. Lots of trees, no koalas. Yeah. So there's an old house there that was run as a men's hostel, and what we're doing is gutting the whole inside of that house, and then it's being turned into a 5-bedroom home and a 2-bedroom unit, and that will provide a really good environment for people that have a little bit more complex support requirements and challenging behaviours because it's a bit of away from the neighbours. So great outcome there. Alimba, which now Deborah won't know where Alimba is either, so where's the closest suburb to Alimba? Caboolture.
Plumstone Road on the M1.
Yeah, so it used to be next where the go-kart track was as you drive up, right? There, that's Alimba. So we bought some land there, about, how big is that block of land?
3,000
square metres, yeah. And we're going to build purpose-built housing for people with Prader-Willi syndrome. So that's been our pet project for a couple of years, and I know you've heard me speak about as we've planned our way through that. But now we've got the land, we're just finalising the designs, and so next year we'll be able to show you what they look like, and that will be a really unique project for a very specific group of people for whom there is no good accommodation across the whole of Australia. Or the world, that's right, because we've searched the world and there's not great accommodation and solutions around the whole world. So we're going to use environment rather than restrictive practices for those individuals. Very exciting for Simon and his team because it's their challenge about getting the service model right and Nigel's challenge about the built environment. Rockhampton, so we're doing 2 things at Rockhampton. We are refurbishing the 2 villas that are there, so the current tenants have moved out and we're just stripping the insides of them and turning them back into appropriate accommodation where people have their own bathrooms other than a shared bathroom, and where there's appropriate overnight accommodation for staff. rather than sleeping and having their office in the living room, which is not the kind of service and support that we like to see. And conveniently, the huge block of land next door, the owner decided to sell it and rang us up and asked us if we were interested, and the board agreed that we could also purchase the block of land next door. So we have a great plan for some robust apartments, some more single units, and just an ongoing development around that land bank. So for the first time this year, we've actually banked the land before we've had the projects ready to go, and that's a really exciting place to be as the organisation grows. So we get very excited about these because it's fun designing and building stuff, but actually it provides houses and homes for people with disability for whom there are none across Australia and across Queensland. It's one of the big problems at the moment, affordable and accessible housing. Quick flick on the NDIS. So just a couple of weird bits of data there, but really the NDIS, now we're fully into the NDIS. Queensland has in theory finished its transition at the end of June this year, but it didn't meet the targets that it thought it would. So it's predicted that 90,000 people in Queensland should be eligible for the scheme, and at the end of the third year, the government had got up to 56,000 of those 90,000. So there's actually almost 30,000 people across Queensland who should be getting funded support who aren't at the moment. So my challenge to you, knock on your neighbour's door and ask them. But yeah, we have a big bit of work ahead of us across this state and across other states, but Queensland's actually the worst in actually finding the people that should be accessing the scheme and having a better life. So we've got some work around just ensuring that that keeps being successful. But you can see, we'll go to the next slide, I think, thanks. So we finished, the last year of transition was the southeast corner. For Queensland, that was 70% of the eligible people transitioned into the scheme in the last 12 months. So it was, as you can imagine, absolute bedlam around just getting people with the right paperwork, the right access, the right plan, and there's been a lot of rework and a lot of disappointment for families and customers because what they got the first time through the scheme isn't actually what they need. So a lot of people are having to go back for reviews, having long conversations, but it's starting to settle down, and I think if we give it another couple of years, and our friends in Mackay and Rocky, who are into the third year of the scheme, their customers and families are starting to see it settle a lot more. So we're kind of hopeful for the southeast corner. All of our customers now have transitioned to new funding models, which is a real great achievement for us, and our staff have worked tirelessly to make sure that no one got left behind and no one got left without a service. So we've gone from state-funded services to 4 different funding methodologies for people depending on whether you are eligible for the scheme, then depending on whether you're over 65 or under 65, and then if you don't meet any of that criteria, then the state government's put in a kind of safety net scheme called QCSS at the moment, which is really light touch, a few hours a week of support for people. But we were delighted to see that everybody ended up with funding and support, so we didn't leave anyone behind in the journey. I've talked about the number of people who are still missing out on services. What is interesting in Queensland is from those 52 or 55,000 people, 29% of those are people that are getting funding for the first time. So those are people that would have got told no through the state system, all those years of knocking on the door and being turned away, are finally starting to get support and funding that they need. And that's a really exciting thing about the scheme. The other challenge around the scheme at the moment, we just stop on that last slide, thanks Aaron, is that people aren't using all of their plans. So the data is showing that of the plans that people get, they're only using about 60% of what they could be using at the moment. So we and our staff now are turning our attention to how do we support our customers and families to use all of their plan, because the plan has decided that's what you should be using. So we're going to actually, that's our change in focus now that we can stop thinking about transition into the scheme and we'll start to think about getting quality outcomes out of the scheme. So that's a very quick overview of the year. It's been a great year. And I'm going to hand back to John to do the formal bits of the rest of, he gets the boring stuff and I get the fun stuff. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Jo. It was actually interesting to hear, we hear a lot of bad publicity about the NDIS, and I know we went through some torrid times when funding wasn't available and systems would break down and cash flow wasn't as we expected and whatever. But it was great, as I was doing a bit of touring this year, to hear some really good news stories out in the regions where people were saying, look for the very first time, for 2 hours in the morning, we actually get 2 people who can assist our customer here, get ready to get dressed and fed and bathed and whatever, ready for the day. And boy, what a difference that's made to their life. So there are some good news stories about NDIS out there too, even though we're frustrated by some of the mechanics. That's really great. So back to the boring stuff, back to the boring person, and thank you, Joe, for just a few insights. Look, please read this booklet too. There's so much more. There's so much more in that annual report which you can read, which just gives you an overview of all the things that are happening. We're just getting the surface here, really. There's a lot of good news there. Now, with your papers, you've received a notice of resolution, which needs to be a special resolution, 75% of members, to change the constitution. And what we're trying to do there is to allow, not necessarily to require, that the number of directors be increased. We're finding that it's, as I mentioned before, it's increasingly eating the time of people, and we think that it would be useful to share the load a little bit where we can. The structure we've got for the board is, like most organisations, we have the members appoint a number of directors, but then to ensure that we really get the best skill set we can, there's provision for the board itself to appoint a few more directors in need. So we've got a range of skills on the board. I'm the token lawyer, we've got an accountant, we've got a property and building person, we've got disability specialists, we've got business people. So there's already a broad range there, but we think we can probably become even more diverse and bring skills to the board, just so that we can really look at the big picture and make sure we make that a great contribution. So what we're proposing to do is to increase the number of possible member elected, that's you guys, directors, to 5, and potentially board elected directors a further 4, although the board elected ones will always be fewer than the member elected ones, if that makes sense. So we could conceivably get up to 9. We may only have 5 or 6 as we do at the moment. We want to identify people who are very good. It was a very pleasing exercise this year. After Michael passed away, we decided, well, we need to look out for new directors, and we identified some really top-notch candidates who were willing and able and enthusiastic. So that was really great news. There are people out there who are very skilled, who want to contribute to this organisation. So that's really great. So you'll have seen the formal wording, which is basically to extend the constitution so that we can provide up to 5 member elected directors rather than the current number. So the first resolution I'm going to propose is that clause 7.1c of the constitution of the company, which has been circulated, be replaced with 7.1c as per the copy provided to members and marked A, and that those changes will become effective immediately. Would someone like to formally move that up for me? Yes, Seth Grantley, and seconded.
David Withers is happy.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Thank you, David. Hamburg has joined the party.
I've been here the whole time. But...
Yeah, I knew you had.
So could I ask for a show of hands for that resolution? Yes, thank you. Anyone who's opposing that? Right, we have some more of the boring stuff, the financial statements and reports, which fortunately you don't have me for, and then we're going on to some other formal business later on. I think we have, we no longer formally have a director called a treasurer, but he really is the treasurer. Chris Perkins, I think, is on the line. He's unfortunately out of the burbs at the moment and wasn't able to get here to 8 Mile Plains, but he's here to present the financial statements, which you can read towards the end of your annual report if you're wanting to follow him. Are you there, Chris?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for the great introduction, John. There is some excitement in finance. So good afternoon. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be with you in person at the AGM today due to other commitments. But it gives me great pleasure to present the financial statements for the financial year ending 30 June 2019 and advise that we've maintained a strong financial position whilst we progress through the NDIS transition. However, this has not been the case for all organisations in the disability sector, unfortunately. Multicap achieved an operating surplus of 1.815 million for the year, which is required to fund capital projects, organisational improvement initiatives, and provide liquidity during the NDIS transition, and also further pursue Multicap's sole purpose. During the year, the Multicap's operating revenue increased by 30% on the previous year, up to 67.9 million. Much of this growth is due to expanded and new service delivery across Queensland and Northern New South Wales, and growth from the transition from the state-funded services to funding under NDIS. So this represented a revenue increase of 28.6 million on 2018. Also, however, our expenses grew by 27% last year, up to 66.2 million, which is largely driven by the growth in the services. Also, the rollout of NDIS in the Southeast region required the organisation to invest in additional staff and systems to ensure the successful transition, and then the organisation was able to operate effectively under the new funding environment. So we've continued to invest in our properties, as Joe has already highlighted, through both planned maintenance expenditure and also capital expenditure for new and enhanced properties to ensure the Multicap property portfolio remains at a very high standard and fit for purpose for all of our clients. So we continue to focus on realising efficiencies in the business, which will allow the organisation to continue to deliver additional services to clients and to also remain sustainable well into the future. So with the inclusion of non-operating items, the organisation's surplus is 2.489 million. Our statement of financial position continues to remain strong, with our current assets exceeding our current liabilities by $3.5 million compared to the previous year of 2.5 million. Our non-current assets, which is mostly represented by land and buildings where our services are provided, increased by 27.3 million. So we continue to invest during the year in infrastructure projects, including purchases of land at Rockhampton and Ormeau and the commencement of construction at these sites. We've finalised the construction of Finucane Road, Balabar, and completed renovations at our main campus at 8 Mile Plains. So there was continued investment in new equipment and fleet vehicles. So we spent 834,000 in total on these. So these projects highlight the continued use of the surpluses and cash from operations to the benefit of our customers. So it is critical that we do continue to develop cash from the business. So our cash from operations remains above 2 million for the year, which is in line with last year. The cash balances have reduced at the end of the financial year to 5.8 million due to the continued expansion of the property base, combined with an increase in receivables due to payments being received in arrears under the NDIS. So we're comfortable in maintaining higher than normal cash balances due to the operating environment that exists under the NDIS. Finally, I wish to pass my gratitude on to members of the board and also the Finance Audit and Asset Committee for the role in governing the financial affairs of the organisation, and for management in delivering on the agreed strategy in what has been a very difficult and challenging operating environment in which the disability sector is. So we continue to prudently manage the finances of Multicap to deliver the long-term financial sustainability of the organisation and the continued delivery of quality services to our many clients. So with this, I now move the adoption of the financial report for the year ending 30 June 2019.
Before we vote on that, I would ask if anyone has any questions of Chris here at 8 Mile Plains or anywhere out in the regions. As you can see, it's become a very sophisticated and complex organisation. There's a lot of time and effort goes into getting it right. And we are probably a shining light amongst disability providers in Australia. NDIS has shown up a lot of providers who are really struggling, who are having severe cash flow problems, and who found out they aren't as efficient as they thought they might have been under the old system. We, in fact, have been the opposite. And that's been as a result of a lot of strategy and planning by the board, by the executive and whatever. And we've also been blessed in Queensland because we're able to do it in stages. So we could start in North Queensland and then go to a second stage and a third stage. And that was of great assistance to us too, just to learn about things and get them right for the majority. But I'm not detracting at all from the enormous amount of financial effort that's gone into it. So I've talked a bit. I don't see any questions, don't hear any questions. Chris has moved the motion that the reports be accepted. Would someone like to second that? Second that? All those in favour? Now, just in case it's all been a dirty great con job from your board, we've got Ashley from Bentley's, who's our auditor, who's here in the room. I don't know that she wants to speak necessarily, but if there are any questions of Ashley, our auditor, now's the time to ask them. Can we really believe those accounts, Ashley?
Answer is yes.
Answer is yes.
In my opinion. And we should point out this is the first year that Bentley's have been our auditors, so we thank you for your introduction to our organisation.
Okay. We've made life easy for you. So we now thank you very much too, Chris. I appreciate that. Oh, sorry, we did vote in favour, didn't we? Yep. So we now come to the election of members. These are of directors by members. So this is your chance to elect new directors. Now, as was mentioned previously, Anne-Marie is regrettably leaving us, but she's going to wonderful pastures overseas, so we really wish her and family very well in that. It'll be a wonderful opportunity for her, and she's been a great asset to us. But that's left one member vacancy, and now we've amended our constitution. There is another member elected vacancy, and our thinking has been that it would be worthwhile getting the maximum number of member elected directors, and that will then give us flexibility. That will leave us with one board appointed director at the moment. And it gives us the possibility of making further board-appointed directors as we see skill sets being available, as we see people becoming available. We would be able to act quickly on that. So to that end, there are two resolutions before us for the election of member-elected directors. One is Angela Tillmans, who is already a board-appointed director, but happy to step down from that position and become a member-appointed director. Sound like a lawyer, I'm sorry. Hopefully you can follow me. Angela has been on the board since May 2017. As was mentioned before, she's the chairman of the Risk, Quality and Systems Committee and a member of the Business Development Committee. She knows everything about the disability sector. Previously, she was the CEO of CPL and she has an enormous amount of knowledge and insight in the area. So she's been an absolutely fabulous director to date, and we'd like to continue that. So I would ask if someone could nominate, I think she actually has been nominated, hasn't she? Sorry, she has been nominated and seconded in writing, and that nomination has been displayed at the head office here as required. So we don't need anyone to do that. If I could just ask if people could vote in favour. I don't see anybody against. As I mentioned, with the passing of Michael, we were, and sort of with the burden of officers, we looked around for possible new positions, and we identified a number of people, in fact, who could assist us. And one of the outstanding ones was Helen Darsh, who's with us here in the front row today. She's a director of Medhurst Consulting, expertise in strategy, facilitation, stakeholder engagement, change management, all the sorts of things which are very relevant to us at the moment. She's also been the chair of a board of another disability organisation in her past life. She's currently a director on the Metro South Hospital Board and Health Service Board, and chair of some other organisations, or chair and director of some other organisations. So she has an immense skill set, and I would recommend that she be elected too. She has been nominated and seconded already in writing. So if people could vote in favour of Helen. Yes, there were no votes. That's those formal resolutions that are listed in the board papers have been carried.
There's no going back now.
Welcome to the family.
One minor thing we do at each year, just confirmation of His Excellency the Honourable Paul de Jersey, Governor of Queensland, as our patron. We've had a long history of having governors as our patrons, and I'm glad to say that they've actually played an active role over the years. They've hosted functions, they've come out and visited here on site, so it's been great. They're not just a nominal thing. So if I could put that confirmation that His Excellency and the Honourable Paul de Jersey be continuous patron for the forthcoming year. All those in favour? Carried, I think. Have I covered everything I'm supposed to cover, Sandra? I think that's the end of this meeting, and there's some lovely food for us, I'm hoping. Thank you very much for coming. As I said, it's been very gratifying to see so many people here and out in the regions too. Thank you very much. That's the end of proceedings.